Hello and welcome back to the Lost Sheep Podcast. I'm Evan Abear here with
Cole Bissett.
and
Nazario Pangallo.
welcome back to episode number 52 of the Lost Sheep Podcast. I know we were super hyped for episode 50. I kind of like 52 a little bit better. It kind of signifies a whole year of doing this, especially with my half year being in the podcast. I was also jamming out to the intro music a little bit. I forgot how good that is. I rarely when I listen to the podcast online, I just kind of skip through the intro. Don't shoot me, but it's really a banger. But anyway, episode 52. Super excited. I have a little question for both of you. I know you're huge soccer fans, and so I wanted to hold on. I got to pull up my. I should have done this before. I got to pull up my ancillary documents. Okay, I wanted to ask you your opinion, both of you, on the brand new U.S. men's national team and U.S. women's national team jerseys. Cole Bissett looks absolutely confused. So I'm guessing you haven't seen them yet. Neither of you have seen them yet. This is going to be a heater. So yesterday, the U.S. Soccer Federation released two new jerseys. The men are going to debut the dark jersey, which has a special name, and the women are going to debut the light jersey here soon in June. I think the women are actually debuting in May. Yeah, so
So we have the black with like the red and blue stripes for the men. Is that what you're talking about?
yeah.
I like that. I like a little pinstripe,
the cloud
pinstripe
one.
Look it
action.
up.
The one for the females, I could be confused, but I feel like it looks like one we've had before.
Well, so that's also the men's one.
Which one?
That they're both. So they're men's and women's jerseys, but
Okay.
the women are just debuting it first. Ooh.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Evan, your phone? We lost your camera.
Ooh, come back.
Oh, there we go.
There
Okay.
we go.
Okay.
Sorry.
He pulled a Cole, dude.
So if you're
Put
on
myself
audio,
on do not disturb.
yeah, if you're on audio and didn't see that, Evan Abear's camera just went out. But Cole Bissett, we haven't heard from you. How are you doing this fine week, May 14th when we were recording this?
Doing pretty good. Been a bit tired. Managed to yesterday I got to pull out a starter from a skid steer and put it back in. So that was great. Really neat experience. And then spent all day yesterday wiring up some fans and staining the ceiling. So that was really neat.
Cool. Very cool. Evan, what about you? Anything going on over there in the great state of Texas?
Man, actually, this week has been really cool. It's been nice and actually cool, like weather cool, which is unheard of for South Texas. Going into May, usually it's 90, 95. And I think we had a few days this week in the low 80s, which was very relaxing and enjoyable.
Never thought I'd hear someone's connect low 80s and relaxing in the same sentence.
Well, I mean, look, let's be so
that's
honest.
pretty bad.
For what's usually 100 degrees out here, low 80s is significantly better. So been pretty good. Glad to be back home, just resting and chilling out before semester begins again. So
Have you been
Yeah.
playing disc golf?
I have not got out. It was super wet. Like it like rained for a couple days. I think y'all had similar stuff. And our disc golf
Mhm.
course is right next to the river. So I need to go out there and see like if it's still swampy and smelling like mud and stuff. So we'll see. I may get out this week.
Yeah, so this past Thursday I got my wisdom teeth done, so I haven't been doing too much. But yesterday, Cole, you will like this. Went to my brother's spring choir concert, and the middle schoolers did "What Is This Feeling" from Wicked. They did a pretty good job with that. If Evan looks confused, so he just shows he hasn't seen the movie. And second,
Yeah.
they did
no idea.
from now on to close it out, Cole. Everyone from the choir, middle school, chamber choir, and mixed choir, they all just combined together and did "From Now On" at the end. So that was very cool. And my brother, shout out Sloan, he's been on the episode or on the podcast one time. He did a solo a little bit, and it was I was very, very impressed. So quick shout out to him.
What do you solo?
I have no idea. I just know it was good. I enjoyed it. I don't know what the song was. So
Oh, so it was
Yeah.
a separate
It's funny.
song.
I was
It
talking
wasn't
to
part of
Nazario
those.
after our choir concert, and I was like, "Did we sound good?" And he's like, I have no idea what good sounds like for choir." And I was just
It's true.
dying. I
It's
was like,
true.
"This kid knows nothing about music." It's really
Yeah.
I just
funny.
enjoy it. I just enjoy it. Yep.
Yeah.
Alrighty, folks. Are we ready to get into our quote for this week? We're 5 minutes in. That's, I think, our goal around how much we want to banter at the beginning, as us goobers like to do. So, Cole, intro our quote for this week. You did bring it, so.
So, yeah, I did bring this quote. I'd like to preface this a little bit. Evan is a little uncultured, so we aren't able to fully dive into this quote the way that Nazario and I would like to dive into it, but that's okay.
Well, hey, let's
But
be
for
so
those
clear.
of you,
You can dive into it, right? I just I mean, the reference has nothing to do with the actual material of the quote, right? So dive in as
Yeah.
much as you want.
but it's just kind of neat to connect it with the parallels and everything. But so the reason I picked this quote is mainly because it's from a book series called The Hunger Games. Nazario and I have been cranking through the books and watching the movies, and we've had a blast. This is kind of like a yearly thing for us now at this point. Last year we did the same thing, and we watched
Is
all the
he
Hunger Games
lagging for you
movies.
there, Evan?
We attempted to watch all of them.
You good, Cole?
Uh-oh.
You're good. Keep going.
You're
Keep
good.
going. You're good.
Am I good?
You recovered.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say we attempted to watch all of them in one night last year, and we failed and fell asleep. So that was our experience with it. But I'm gonna go ahead and jump straight into it. So this is actually from the main villain in the series, President Snow, which is kind of ironic. But hope is the only thing stronger than fear, President Snow. And for those of you on visuals, we have modified and upgraded and gotten more professional and put together a nice little theme for the quote
Graphic,
up here.
little
So
graphic,
if
yeah.
you want to read it, yeah, go for it. But for those of you not, hope is the only thing stronger than fear, from President Snow. Any of y'all want to shoot?
Well, since I'm uncultured, is this from the main Hunger Games series, or is this from the Ballad of Serpents and Songbirds or whatever?
Songbirds and Snakes. That
Songbirds
was
and
just
Snakes?
correcting. Cole, which one is this from?
I'm pretty sure this one's from Songbirds and Snakes, because it's when, if I remember correctly, this is when Snow is complaining to Plutarch. Oh wait, yeah. Okay, no. This is from Catching Fire, because this is when Snow is complaining to Plutarch about the rebellion in the districts, and Plutarch says this, and he said, "Hope is the only thing stronger than fear, and we can't give them hope." So
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
Evan,
yeah.
any shots, or you want me to go first?
The only thing, I mean, I like this quote. I think it's you come across it the first time, and I kind of read it, and I was like, okay, whatever, that makes sense. It's a good message. I think if I could drag in, if I could drag in another movie that's more up my alley, which is going to be funny because it's another one, but in Star Wars Episode 8, I think, when Leia's talking to whatever his name is, Poe, maybe, I think this conversation is, she says, hope is the spark that lights the fire that starts the rebellion. And so very, very similar lines of kind of that tiny thing that grows bigger and bigger. And we look a lot at hope as one of the cardinal virtues in the church. And so even from a theological standpoint, it's a thing that we don't think about, I think. We don't discuss a lot, that can be a very big driver in our life, can be a very big proponent in a lot of facets of our lives.
Yeah, so building off both of your guys' movies that you've brought, for the Hunger Games, the hope comes from, basically surrounds Katniss Everdeen, the main character, and in Catching Fire, they go into a Hunger Games for the second time, and Katniss doesn't know, but everyone is basically trying, not everyone, everyone that is a part of the rebellion that is in this Hunger Games is trying to keep her alive and willing to do whatever to keep her alive. And then in Star Wars, the number one thing that jumps out at me is when they have the plans to the Death Star, everyone is willing to sacrifice themselves to get those plans to the rebellion. And so in both of those instances, there's one thing that is driving the hope, but everyone else is sacrificing themselves for this hope. And it's kind of a different parallel to how we see our Christian faith, in that our hope is in Jesus, but Jesus was the one to die for us. And so he was the one to sacrifice, even though he is our hope. And so kind of just an interesting parallel that kind of jumped out at me right off the bat.
I'm agreeing with both y'all totally. I think this quote is really interesting. I agree with it, but I don't agree with the word only in this one. I think faith. I think if we talk about like the 3 theological virtues, I think all 3 of those I would say are stronger than fear in that sense. But I'm going to pull out some definitions here, boys. So
Shocker.
yeah.
Wait, let me gun back to Nazario real fast.
Go
then.
for it. Go for it.
So I liked, the whole thing, and I think we talked about this last week, or maybe it was with Austin a couple weeks ago. But yeah, the cool thing about like the crucifixion, the resurrection, Paschal mystery, is that apologies, it is that. Did I just get soloed? Holy cow!
Yeah, you guys saw that.
Ooh, fancy. The cool thing about the Paschal Mysteries is that you kind of enter into this place of like, yeah, our hope died, right? Like you talk about like in Star Wars, in the Hunger Games, like our hope is this thing, is this organization, is this feeling. And when you enter into the faith, your hope was this person, and this person's gone now. And so like that's a symbolic destruction of the entirety of the hope that you had for your future and for everything. And so it makes that reaction of the disciples, even with the Holy Spirit, right? It makes that reaction so much stronger, because it's akin to like, if we go into Star Wars, we go into um, whatever, the Hunger Games, and we say, all right, well, like the whole entire rebellion is destroyed. Okay, the people that still hate the Capitol, they're gonna have no hope, right? In Star Wars, the whole entire rebellion is destroyed. The people that still hate the Capitol, or the people that still hate the Empire, woof, they're gonna have like no hope. They're gonna have absolutely no hope for what's to come or the next day. So I think it makes that reaction and that strength of the apostles, that decision, that first decision to continue the church and to pray and to believe, so much stronger and so much more potent.
Yeah, and I think this, Cole, if you want to bring me back on, there we go. Nice one. But I think this is why it's important to meditate and to dwell on the crucifixion, because it is so important that we know how much Jesus would sacrifice for us, and we know what that means for us and everything like that. But it's important not to think that that's not all there is, and to focus on the resurrection, because while crucifixion was an incredible act, the resurrection is where our hope lies. And if there's no resurrection, as Evan talked about with their reaction to the crucifixion, if there's no resurrection, there's no Christian faith. Because the Christian faith isn't about, just dying for dying, right? It's dying to be raised. And that is what we place our hope fully in. And Jesus is death and resurrection. And that is what we try to do throughout our lives. Yes, we want to join in dying with Christ so that we can be raised with him into eternal life and into his glory. And that, I think, is just a really, really the main point to focus on. Is don't just think about the death, because that can bring you down, as Evan talked about. Focus on the resurrection, because that is what will bring you hope.
I think looking at the power of hope and the strength of hope and everything that it can give to society, if we look at Jesus' story and his salvation, and honestly, when we talk, especially in the Catholic Church, we have the crucifix instead of just the cross. And I know that sparks a lot of controversy among other denominations because it's like, oh, why are we trying to remember his death? It's because his death is the time that gave us the most hope. Because when he died, he promised us that he would rise again. And in that promise, we practiced the ultimate hope, and we had to hope that he would come back. And that's what he did. He came back 3 days later. And so when we're talking about hope, especially in the Hunger Games, again, I want to throw it back to that, especially in Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2. Katniss endured the arena twice, and she survived both times. And then when she got out, she was forced kind of, not, I would say she was forced, but she kind of had to do it for the rebellion to actually work out. She went back to District 13 and basically was their media advertiser and was this girl on fire, the girl that could provide hope, the girl that could strengthen the rebellion, the girl that could cause change. And so she would do these media advertisements and would say these things that were motivational. And if we look at World War II, it's the same sort of thing. You know, like we had what was the guy's name for the war that they used for media for America? It's like something Sam.
Uncle Sam?
Yeah.
Is bro
Him.
American?
Sorry.
Is
Out
bro
of my
American?
out of my head. Anyways, I think looking at all of this, oh, can I go back to there we go. That works. I think looking at all of this, it really truly shows how strong hope actually is. And so I want to pull up the Catechism's definition on fear. This is actually, from the Catholic Encyclopedia. Fear, in a moral sense, is the soul's unsettlement following the apprehension of present or future danger. Which I think is a really good definition. Like a really good definition. It is the soul's unsettlement following the apprehension of present or future danger. What do y'all think about that?
So I have a question real quick. Going off this definition, we're talking about fear and hope. Can fear be good without hope attached to it? Obviously, if a fear we have leads us to hope, then that's a good thing. Like we're reacting to that, we're responding to our fear in the right way. But fear on its own, is it bad on its own for us? Or how can we, take fear on its own and it be a good thing? What do you guys think on that?
Wait, so how do we feel? Can you read the quote again? I'm sorry.
I'll put it back.
Not
on
the quote.
Page.
No, sorry. The definition. Apologies.
Let me pull it up. 1 second. Alrighty. Fear, in a moral sense, is the soul's unsettlement following the apprehension of present or future danger.
Okay.
Yeah, like that unsettling feeling. Can we just rest in that sometimes? Can we just sit there and meditate on it and be like, okay, I understand this is unsettling to me. This is not, like, we realize this is not the way things are supposed to be. Can that be good on its own?
This is Nazario's inner psychologist.
The only
Just asking.
the only Cole Bissett ad I would put on that, and that's copyright, by the way, so don't take that. That I would put on that quote is perceived danger, the soul's apprehension or whatever to perceive danger, because sometimes we're not in danger and we're still fearful. I don't know. I think Nazario, that's a good question. It'll be interesting to see what Cole says about this. But it's hard, right? Because I think you can't sit in fear permanently. Obviously, like when you talk about fear, it's something that like what's neutrality, and we discuss again, throwing back to whatever episode that was, 47 or 48. Neutrality doesn't exist because there's parallels to everything. And so we have fear because of hope. And so at some point, like if you live your entire life in fear, it no longer becomes fear, it becomes like your resting state. But on the non psychological side, on just the purely like, can we do it? I think you can have fear without hope, but it's a different type of fear. Right? Like I am fearful that if I don't clean my room or take care of my belongings, that they're going to be taken away from me, or that they're going to deteriorate, or that they're going to, be destroyed. Like, that's not so much a hope thing as it is just like, I'm in danger of losing them. I'm in danger of them destroying or something like that, right?
But in that now I'm thinking about it, like, is there fear without hope? Because when you think about what you're saying, you're fearful of all these things deteriorating, but in the back of your mind, still in there, do you think there's a hope of, hey, I hope that I can make these things better. I hope that I can keep them well and hope that they can last longer. So, like, is there fear without hope in anything? Like, do you always have a sense of hope in all fear?
I think you have to, right? I think like we said earlier, there can't be one without the other, right? There has to be light and dark together. Otherwise, it's just is. And it's kind of like we talk about, like, Yahweh, the translation. The translation is I am who am. Like, there's nothing else about that. Like, nothing like like God is, right? And so, like, it becomes that. If there was another thing that was equal to God, then God would not be is. Like, good God wouldn't be. But because God is the only thing that is equal to God, then he is the only thing that can be. And so it kind of comes into that same thing with, like, again, fear and hope, or light and dark. If only one of those things occurred, or one was, like, always outdrew the other, then we would say, like, okay, that's the only thing that there is. Fear is the only thing that there is, because that's the only thing we can experience, and nothing can quell that. And that's not true. Again, like, yeah, one single sliver of hope can reignite our passion towards a goal, or towards a better existence.
Got anything over there, Cole?
Interesting. I agree with, I don't think you can have fear without hope, but I don't, is fear hope's counterpart? Like, are we settling on that?
I
Or-
don't think I am.
Alternative? Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Alternatives.
Like, what is hope's counterpart? I don't know. Like, I have no idea.
Well, so what's fear's counterpart? Right? You can't say no and then not provide an alternative. So alternative theories.
I'm not saying no. I'm more questioning. I don't know if I have a what's fear's counterpart.
Yeah, so we need an alternative
I
theory.
feel like
I think it would be
hope-
courage. Wouldn't it be courage?
I feel like the hope counterpart for me, the definition or the word that comes to me is despair more than fear.
Yeah,
Because I
get
don't,
that.
because I feel like hope and fear, whether you are a very hopeful person, like when you are thinking about that thing, there's still going to be, like, as we talked about with fear, there's always a sliver of hope. With hope, there's always still a sliver of fear, I think. So I think they go together, but I don't know if I'd say counterpart. But maybe I'm just saying counterpart
Well, so
in the same thing, and I'm just not
Yeah,
understanding it.
the only thing I would say is, like, I think if you looked up the definition of despair, it would say, like, the absence of hope. And so the only reason I can't, I would say
literally does say that.
it's not a counterpart is because, like, an absence doesn't make a counterpart, in my opinion. Like
What's
it's not
Cole?
the
What's the definition of
reverse.
counterpart? Like, what do you? It's not
Well,
reversed.
so,
Reversed.
like,
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, like, mathematically, like, like, if I have three things, the absence of those three things is 0. That is not the opposite of those three things. The opposite of those three things is me owing someone those three things, right? Does that make sense?
-3, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like, that's kind of where I'm going. So, like, the absence of something intrinsically can't be its opposite per se, right? So, like, I think when we talk about, like, the opposite of, like, being that counterpart, we can't do courage, because, like, when you talk about courage and fear, like, courage is the thing that helps you overcome it. It's not the counterpart. Like, you don't, like, that fear is still there. I think we talk about this in discipleship sometimes. Like, you're gonna still have that fear whether you're courageous or not. Like, that fear is still gonna be present. However, like, when you have hope, that hope has replaced that fear, or that hope has superseded that fear even, right? We talk about hope for the resurrection. Like, our fear is death. but that's superseded completely and taken over by the hope that we have for the resurrection in heaven, right? So I think that's where I draw that parallel of it is the counterpart that we're looking for.
Then I wonder if the counterpart for fear is faith then. Because if we're talking about replacing something, right? Like courage isn't going to replace fear, and instead it helps you overcome fear. But rather replacing fear with faith, I think maybe is more of an accurate way to go about it, because faith requires an utter laying down of one's heart and believing and trusting. And again, it kind of does link with hope, I think, in the end, but I wouldn't say it's its counterpart. I think they're two different things, but I think they are linked together by the amount of influence they have on society, if that makes sense. Because I think they're both very powerful, very powerful. One's a virtue, one's not.
Yeah, and I think it's
Wait,
conversation, but
one's a virtue, one's not. Between what and what?
hope and fear,
No, hope,
right?
hope and fear.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about faith still. I was like,
And I do want to say that I do think it's okay, because I didn't answer earlier's question, but I do think it's okay to sit in fear for a little bit. Now I would definitely wouldn't say indefinitely. Like let's look at the Garden of Gethsemane, when Jesus went out there and literally sat in fear, in so much fear that he bled blood, right?
Good pull,
And
Cole.
Jesus
Good
sat
pull.
in his fear, and then he allowed himself to just be there and be fearful for a minute, because he was going to make the ultimate sacrifice, and it was the worst death in history, and he knew that's what it was going to be. And so he sat in fear for a little bit. But the point is, you need to like be able to switch out of that mode and switch into the mode of just faith, which is what Jesus did. And Jesus asked, if this isn't if this is not my cup to bear, then take it from me, and it was his cup to bear. And so Jesus practiced perfect faith from then on out and showed us what true faith looks like. And so that's why I would say I think it's its counterpart.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, Cole, and I want to add another thing for you guys to think about and respond to. So when I think of hope over here, well, here, fear right here, and so could we think about hope as less of a feeling, more of our spirit, our will, over our fear, flesh, feelings over here on the other side? Is this a proper counterpart comparison to make? Evan, you look interested.
yeah. So I pulled up USCC, not USCC, CCC, the Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph 1817, if anybody's interesting. And hope is the theological virtue by which we desire the kingdom of heaven and eternal life as our happiness, placing our trust in God's promises and relying not on our own strength, but on the help of the grace of the Holy Spirit. So I think as we continue this talk of kind of like counterparts, parallels, whatnot, like I like that last line a lot. And I think this is what you're talking about, Cole, with kind of the uh, Mount of Olives example, right?
Garden of
Like,
Gethsemane? Is that what you meant to say?
yeah.
There you go.
The Mount, it's on the Mount of Olives, right? No, yeah, maybe. Okay. Anyway, but when you go into that, like that was Christ coming to God and saying, like, not my will but yours. Basically, he says, right, like, if it's your will, let this cup pass from me. But if it's not, I'm in. And so I think it's that last line of placing our trust in Christ's promises and relying not on our own strength, but the help of the grace of the Holy Spirit. So I think when we're looking for that counterpart, if we can find that counterpart, maybe it's self-dependency, self-sufficiency, something like that, where like our hope is not in Christ. Our hope is not in something else. Our hope is not in the Holy Spirit for heaven. It's a hope in ourselves. Maybe we can even look at ego, like our own ego, as the parallel to hope. Theologically, I think is an interesting parallel to like Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane, which I think is almost a perfect. I mean, he's as perfect as we can get as humans, right? Obviously, but is almost a perfect, a picturesque moment example of the hope that we're supposed to have for heaven. Because like you said, Cole, right, he's in that garden knowing what he has to do, knowing the death he's about to die, and nevertheless, and this is where I argue that courage is different than the opposite of hope, nevertheless he has the courage to still sit in that fear and say, not my will, yours. Let's go through this.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I agree with you on the courage point. I think that makes a lot of sense. Um, so kudos, convinced me.
I'm
But
gonna I'm gonna
and then
get I'm gonna get Cole a shirt, and it just is gonna say "I agree" on it, like with a period. I agree. Period.
I've been focusing on my rights this episode, so I'm hoping when I go back and clip it, I'm not saying it like a gazillion times.
I
We'll
had to
see.
stop myself a couple times too as well. So it's not just yourself over there, bud.
Well,
Do you say right too?
Alex,
Really?
I do
does it.
sometimes.
Alex does it?
Alex Grusho does it. So like he'll be
Really?
explaining something. He'll be explaining s- anything, and he'll do like the understanding, the progress check.
We
Yeah,
all have our own filler words.
yeah.
It's
It's
just
weird
about
though,
learning that
because it's like
how to
such a
handle
bounce
'em.
off for me. Like I use it and so nonchalantly, I don't even notice it. It's
Well,
It's
just
just
hard-
how you transition so naturally. You'll just be talking about something and there's no reason to say right, but it
no.
just pops out, but it helps you move to your next sentence.
I need
Yeah.
something better. I need something
But
better.
people respond to it. That's the hard part. Like you're saying it in conversation, right? And people will not see. Both of you just nodded your head along to it. So that's you get like that feedback of like they're engaged with me. They're understanding what I'm talking about. And so it's really easy to keep falling into. Interesting Pavlov response from both of you there, but
I think the power of silence, just stopping, seeing what people do, because sometimes the silence can help people refocus if they're not focused, because they hear, oh, there's nothing going on. Wait, what happened? Then they dial back in. But I do see what you're saying with right. It can be used at times, but I think silence can also be used at times.
when so digging right back into our quote, I think like we talked about those periods of not hope, like those periods of desolation. So let's use desolation. Is that the word we use? Desolation is the absence of
Solitude.
hope.
Yeah.
I thought we.
Solitude's a good one.
Desolation, the absence of hope. What was it?
Despair. I said despair.
Despair.
Yeah.
Despair. So those
Which is
moments
the
of
counterpart of hope. I looked it up. So kudos to you again,
Mm,
Nazario.
interesting. See, I disagree with that, but that's interesting. But so like those
Disagreeing with
moments,
definitions, quite an interesting thing to
hey,
do.
regular day, regular
Oh
day.
yeah. Oh yeah.
But no, I think those moments of despair are what allows us to refocus, right? And I think we talk about this in our prayer life a lot, and it's cool. Shout out to the PPP today, but we talk about these moments of despair, and this is where I get into the desolation. The moments of desolation where like our prayer life's not great. Maybe we're going through the motions, we're going to the sacraments, but it's kind of like whatever. We're not in tune with it. And this is the place where like kind of that beauty of a sacrifice, or that beauty of the church can really draw us back in and help us. But also it's those areas where we kind of do have to push harder and realize like, okay, I'm in a place that's not great. I'm in this area of despair. And it's like you said, Nazario, that silence kind of helps us to notice that, I need to refocus. Like there's something I'm missing. And I think a lot of times when we get that time, when we get that little snap back to reality of like, hey, wow, I'm missing something, then that drives us forward a little bit more and to be a little bit better. Because I know for myself, I'm always like, okay, well, what was I doing before? Right. And so, like, obviously, if I fell out of that or got bored with that or was upset or something, I fell of that. I fell out of that routine. I need to change something about that routine, add something to that routine, take it away, because it obviously wasn't working for my life if I couldn't maintain it. And again, not to say that like our faith should conform to how we live our lives, but your prayer life should be able to be replicable on every day of your life.
Yeah.
Replicatable on every day of your life. And you should try to build your life around that, but also we got to realize, right, we have jobs and responsibilities and things that are earthly responsibilities that need to come first. And so, yeah, I always think about that. Like that moment of silence, that moment of despair, of desolation really helps you to refocus, come back to the now, and ascertain what you need to do to get back on track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good little transition for us to get into our, what do we do, shepherd first?
I think we do prayer. Yeah, personal.
Practical prayer practice.
You want to try it,
Nazari,
Evan? You want to try it, Evan?
No, absolutely not. I enjoy listening to the music.
All right, here we go.
We got the practical prayer practices of the week. It's a week to week thing. It's never the same.
1 week I'm gonna bring a kazoo or like some other, like I'm gonna bring
That-
like a mouth harp or a trumpet or something. I'm gonna
Just
just
start
be
like
playing
the
it on the other
racketeer
side.
things. I don't even know.
Yep. Bongos, something like that. Yep.
Yeah. So obviously, with our theme of hope, our practical prayer practice of this week is to focus on hope. And I'm not sure if you guys do this all the time, talking to our audience and you too, but when fear comes along, when you're feeling really just down in the dumps, or maybe things are going good, our thing for this week is to focus on hope as much as possible. And that can be the imagery of just thinking, oh, I know one day Jesus is coming back and he's going to do his thing. I know one day that I'm going to heaven. It could be that imagery of hope. Or it could be as simple as the hope, say you're in the middle of the day and you're grinding at work and you're just like, man, I'm beat right now. It could be as simple as knowing there's hope that later in the day you get to go home and relax. And any type of hope that you can draw, that is what we were going for this week. So any type of imagery, any type of prayer that you want to use to draw on hope, that is what we are focusing on this week for our PPP. Hello?
Evan, you look like you're deep in research over there.
No, I was looking something up. Yeah, no, as I talked, I kind of touched on this a little bit before, but just hope in the desolate parts of your prayer life, and hope that your prayer is being heard. I think it's easy for us to fall into kind of that. I'm not getting emotion out of this. I'm not getting a feeling out of this. I'm not really feeling like, honestly, even my prayers are being heard. It's really easy to fall into that. We're humans. We need that. God created that emotional response for us for a reason. And so it's really easy to fall into kind of despair and just whatever if we feel like our prayers aren't getting answered. And I think, I always say this, like, hey, no is an answer, right? One of the priests I know always says, like, seminary has 100% discernment rate. Either you discern that you're supposed to be there or you discern that you're not supposed to be there. And so prayer is a lot the same, right? Prayer always gets answered. But if you have a stupid prayer because God's will is something different, God's going to say no. If you're like, man, God, I hope you magically give me an 100 on this circuits final.
Wow.
The
disrespect.
God may be like, hey, man, look, you didn't study a lick for this thing. All right. So not my problem, right? No. But that's still an answer. Like, that's what we have to realize, that those are still answers to our prayers. And I think that's important to remember, and to have hope that, have hope in God's will, have hope in his plan for us. And then also, have hope for the resurrection. I think that's humanity's biggest fear is death, destruction, that the final darkness. And so when we have hope for the resurrection, when we have hope for eternal life, we have hope for unity in the body of Christ, then what do we fear? Because what is a bigger fear than death, right? And so just have
Does
hope.
Does that not answer the quote right there, Evan?
The quote?
You just answered the quote. You said the greatest fear is death, and
Is death, yeah.
the only thing stronger than fear is hope. And you talked about the hope of the resurrection. Just saying.
Yeah.
Oh, looky there.
Hey,
You just
boom.
did it. Proofed right there.
Bang.
Real quick, for my advice on a way to practice hope in the form of prayer, if you're looking for hope in the form of prayer, is to look up the Litany of Hope. Easy prayer. Doesn't take too long. There's a lot of different litanies you can do if you're wanting to. Litanies kind of help you align on a single point in your prayer life and kind of stick with it. And it really, I've found a lot of benefits from doing that. The litany of humility of one, the litany of faith, and there's plenty out there. So pretty much anything you can think of. But if you're looking for a good prayer for the litany of hope, which this one even says the litany of hope, and then in parentheses against despair. So Nazara, you did a really good job with that. Again, kudos to you for figuring out that counterpart without having to look up anything. So
Yeah, and for anyone, if you're wondering how the heck do I find the Litany of Hope, if you download the app Laudate, it is 100% on there. Cole, is that where you found it, or where did you find it?
I just looked it up.
Yeah,
But
like you just look it up,
anywhere.
like
It does not
it's
take that long to
anywhere.
find.
Yeah, and so Cole, going off of this morning, sometimes Cole and I like to sing a lot because when we go to mass together, we're bopping to the church hymns, and sometimes they get stuck in your head. And this morning, I was about to shave, get myself ready, and I was like, I want to turn on. I had "Shepherd Me, O God" in my head, and I was like, shoot, I'm just gonna look it up. So I look up on Apple Music, "Shepherd Me, O God," and it just turns on, and you just see just me in my bathroom shaving, just singing a church hymn. But then what reminded me of this, Cole, was the next, I think the second thing that came on was the Litany of the Saints. But it was just people singing it, and I was like, shoot, I didn't even realize, like, it was maybe 30 seconds in, I looked at what it was, and I was like, oh, I'm doing a litany right now, let's go. So
Yeah, I love litanies. I think they're really beneficial, and I think they're really great because they help you kind of really focus in and dial in on what you want your prayer to be about. So.
And they're really fun to sing as well, to get a
Yes,
little
they
bit
are.
of that praise and worship going.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna transition over to the shepherd. Nazario, are you ready?
Sure. The shepherd of the week. Dun, dun, dun. That one goes way faster. Holy cow! I was a little
Yeah,
bit
that was only 5
freaked out.
seconds.
So, Evan, you kind of chose this shepherd of the week. I presented two to the group, and Evan was adamant that he wanted this person to be our shepherd. So you can introduce him, sir.
Yeah. So actually, I had kind of I talked about this last episode, and which was ironic because we were absolutely right. We did get a pope before filming the next episode. But shepherd of the week, pray for him, Pope Leo the 14th.
It was the day before he got elected, right? That we recorded last week.
Yeah. So it was the day before, which was kind of a shock. I think I called on that episode. I was like, I expected it to be kind of a longer conclave, and it wasn't. It was like 4 votes or 3 votes or something.
Now, not only was it not long, but then it was also very unexpected, the result.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, I think this calls back a lot of the homily from Father Mugaga that I shared last episode, and kind of saying, like, we have to trust in our Pope. We have to believe in the Pope. We have to trust that he's guided by God and trust that this is God's church. Because a lot of the feedback instantly from the conclave was, oh, an American Pope. Okay, not based at all, right? And, for
Except
Americans,
for us here in America.
Except for us in America, where I'm pretty sure there's. I keep seeing all these memes, and it's like it'll be like St. Peter's, like St. Peter's Square. It'll be like a Waffle House and a Dollar General and stuff, and it's like now that we have an American
Buc-ee's
Pope.
ones kill me, dude. The
Yes,
Buc-ee's ones kill
yes.
me.
But it's like, we have to understand that, like, that stinks for those people that think that, obviously, right? Because there's a significant fallacy in saying I don't think that should be the Pope because, again, he's selected by God, and I pray for those people because he's selected by God. So it's kind of saying, you don't think God's plan is right, and that's a tough egg to hold. But just pray and have hope for him, right? Obviously, this is the world's hardest job. It's got to be the world's hardest job. And to be in the area where we are in the world, the time we are in the world, he's taken on a big role. And I think the other thing that's cool is, and I don't know if anybody's ever rejected this, but theoretically they ask the Pope, like, the votes get counted, and they ask the Pope elect, and you're the Pope elect for like 3 minutes, pretty much. They ask the Pope elect. They say, "Are you willing to accept the papal, like the papal bill? Like, basically, are you willing to become Pope?" And I guess you have the opportunity to say no. I guess I don't know anybody who's ever said no. But the second thing that happens is all of the cardinals like pledge allegiance to the new Pope. And apparently it's very popular to say, like, to apologize to the Pope, because they're like, I'm sorry for what I've done to you. Basically saying, I'm sorry I've voted you in as Pope. Like, I know this is a pain in the butt. And so, yeah, Pope Leo, shout out. He's now our greatest shepherd, and he needs prayers. He needs hope. He needs intercessory prayers. He needs the guidance of the church. He needs the guidance of the saints. He needs the guidance of Christ in order to be an effective leader. And so keep praying for him and just keep him in your heart. What do y'all think? What do y'all have to say about this whole thing?
Oh, well, Nazar is just in there. So for me, just a couple little tidbits. I don't know if I told you all this story last week, but I was sitting there listening on EWTN, and they were telling a pretty funny story about a papal election, probably about 100 years ago. But what happened was the first person that they voted in said no. He didn't want to do it, and so they all were trying to gauge, okay, who in the world are we going to vote in? And so they all voted off on the first one. They all voted off, but they all voted the same person. And so I believe that is Pope. I forget. I think it's one of the Piuses, but one of the first couple Piuses. But they accidentally elected somebody, which was quite an interesting little story. Because in the end, that's not an accident at all. It's a person chosen by God. So just a funny little tidbit there. But I think the most entertaining part of the conclave by far was Pope Leo's brothers. Listening to them talk about everything has been hilarious. The older brother is killing me. He was like, yeah, I feel like just last week I was sitting there pushing him down the stairs, just messing around with him. I was like, oh my gosh. The younger one is pretty funny too. He was like, yeah, we drove into the Vatican the other day and had pizza with the guy, and I'm like, and he's like, wow, now he's just Pope, and he's like, so now we just can't casually just go get pizza. They were literally playing Wordle a couple hours before the papal election that day. So I think it's just funny to. I think what's cool about Pope Leo is you can see a lot of his humanity and a lot of his personhood in his family. Especially because he's from America, we have the opportunity we can understand, I guess, where he's coming from a little bit more. So it kind of makes it, I guess, for us, we're I guess not more fortunate isn't the right word, but a little more knowledgeable of where he's coming from, and so it's kind of really interesting to see his family history.
The thing I'm kind of curious about with this whole like, in America this time around, like, we got a lot of like you're saying, like Fox News and CNN and ABC and all these are like reaching out to his family and like his friends and stuff. And I keep seeing on Instagram and things like all these memes, and it's like POV, like your parents went to high school with the Pope and stuff like this. And it's just, yeah, for me, it's just kind of like it's just an attention grab. But that's a whole different conversation. But I am curious on if this happens in other countries when the Pope is elected. Like, for example, when Pope Francis was elected, whereas like Argentinian media going to his house and being like, hey, where's your mother? Let's talk to her, right? And stuff like that. And I think, again, it puts the Pope in an interesting position of how do I deal with the American media? Because we are notoriously media fueled as a country. And it'll be an interesting, I hope he stays away from it. I hope he does, but it'll be an interesting, it's one of those things that like the American media digs up everything. So it'll be an interesting few months as they continue to just be the kind of worms that the American media is. Yeah. No distrust in them whatsoever.
For anyone that doesn't know, Pope Leo's odds of becoming the Pope were 99-1, and he only had a 1% chance of winning. So for any of those that are understand what this means exactly. If you watched the Kentucky Derby a few years ago, there was a horse that wasn't even slated to run in the Derby until like 3 days before, and his odds were like 84-1. He won the race, and that still was not as unexpected as Pope Leo being elected as the Pope. And that's pretty cool, first off. And if you don't know the Kentucky Derby or anything about odds, I'm sorry, but maybe it's still pretty cool. 1% chance. But his name, Pope Leo. Leo does stand for lion, so pretty cool. And in one of his first talks, he talked about how the last Pope, Pope Leo XIII, the last Leo Pope, and he was a big part of transitioning the Catholic Church through the Industrial Revolution. And so one of the reasons that Pope Leo XIV picked this name was because of this kind of, I guess period is what I'll call it, the period of artificial intelligence, and we don't really know what's going to happen with it, what to do with it, all these different things that are going on. But he chose this to help to focus on that and how to make sure that we're keeping human dignity through that, and that's what's most important. And I think that's what some people can get confused about when they look at the Pope, is some of the things that, people got mad at some things Pope Francis said about climate change or politics, and that is ultimately not what the Pope is for. Like, if he says things that are good on that, cool. If he says things that are bad on that, all right. But most importantly, he's supposed to be the leader of the faith and the leader of human dignity and to protect life at all times. And so to focus on what he does with that is very important. But secondly, I have to talk about this. Him being American Pope, I think that God chose, well, I mean, obviously God chose him for a variety of reasons, and he knows all the reasons. But I feel like the way that America, the United States, is going to kind of hopefully be just revitalized with Catholicism through this is going to be very exciting to see, because I mean that's what we hope. But the United States, obviously I'm from the United States. I can't talk. I hope there's no international people here. Well, actually, I hope there's international people here. I hope they don't get offended at what I'm going to say. But we believe that we are 100% the greatest country on the face of the planet. At least for those that are patriotic, as the three of us are. Especially, we got Alabama, we got Texas, two like just patriotic, just come at us, we'll kill you with our guns type of states. I don't really know if I can say that about Kentucky, but those two states for sure. And so we are just crazy. Like, we think we're just the greatest country ever. You guys think you have the greatest states ever. I'm not really I'm getting more fond of my state thanks to Cole trying to say that Alabama is like incredible and everything. But we are very arrogant people. And so the fact that we have a pope now, the rest of the world's got to watch out, because we're just going to be boasting about it like crazy. But I think it's kind of the reason that God did it. Like, he wants to have a country revitalized. Like, we are the global superpower. Now we have the Pope. Will this lead to more Catholicism in the United States? We sure hope so. And it's got me very excited because I love America. USA, US. So, yeah. Had to shout out the country real quick.
It is funny that you mentioned the betting odds. It's so interesting because I remember him telling me that there were odds on this, and I was like, whoa, there's betting.
I actually heard from Sam Stomp, who was on the podcast a couple weeks ago. He said you would get used to be excommunicatable, I think that's how you say it, if you bet on the papal election, but it's not excommunicatable anymore, I've heard. That's what he said.
It's still, as Catholics, we're still not allowed to bet on the papal election. Pope Gregory XIV banned it in 1591.
I definitely did.
Yeah, I would definitely frown on that.
Yeah.
To finish things off,
who aren't Catholic, it is quite entertaining to watch the odds though.
Yeah. To finish it off, obviously I just went on a rant about America, but I think it will be very important for Pope Leo in his reign. No, not reign. What is it called? Term, I guess.
In his reign. His reign. That's correct.
That he doesn't focus on America too much. Like, he needs to invest in America in a good way, but if he does it too much, like, he's going to get people mad, because there are people around the world that do not like the United States. So the way that he handles that is going to be very important. But I'm super hyped for whenever he comes, he's going to speak English. Like, he's going to speak English in America as a pope. I don't know if that's happened before. That's going to be so fire.
Yeah, a lot of people are discussing, like, there was a lot of chatter on the internet, like, Pope Leo is going to be the first pope to come to the United States in like do a TLM mass at in New York or Boston or something like that, or even at Chicago. They have some huge beautiful churches in Chicago. There's a famous one in the bottom of a tower that hasn't it's not really used as a full church parish anymore, and a lot of people are like, ooh, what if he comes back here and his first mass is at this tower built in the 1800s. But yeah, super hyped to hear an American pope on American soil talk about our faith, and hopefully that brings a revitalization. I absolutely agree.
So we've only got about 5 minutes left of local recording time on StreamYard for the month. So we don't have a ton of time, but I would like for us to go ahead and transition to our closer so we can get through our closer. But that is Pope Leo XIV. He is going to govern the church very well, and we're very excited to see.
Only 69 years old, by the way, as well. So hopefully a long reign for Pope Leo.
Yes. So, final thoughts. Hope is the only thing stronger than fear, and I'm gonna go ahead and go. I think we established very well what the counterparts are. I think we kind of settled on hope being the counterpart of despair, and fear being the counterpart of faith. And I think those are very important because being able to know, this is why and Evan may not completely agree with the fear one, but I'm gonna roll with it. I think if the best way, and Nazari was killing it, the best way to understand something is to see both sides and see both sides of the story, because it helps you build more strength in your own. And so I think by understanding despair, we better understand hope, and by understanding fear, we better understand faith. So,
yeah. And we touched on the Garden of Gethsemane for a little bit earlier, and I want to close with that for me. The Garden of Gethsemane is when we see, I think, the most clear realization of Jesus being human, and we see that he has these incredible emotions and this just incredible fear. And my final thing is, it's okay to feel those emotions. It's okay to let them be and to notice them. But it is important not to be ruled by them. Obviously, we know this. And this is why we have to strengthen our will, whether it be through fasting or just whatever it is to help strengthen your will. And to know, hope is, to me, is knowing. You have to know. Sometimes you're not going to feel your hope. Sometimes the emotion is not going to be there for hope. But it's about knowing and being able to overcome the emotion and the feelings of fear. That's what I would close with.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is just just pray for the Pope. Pray for our new Pope, as he continues to lead us in hope, in prayer, in service, as he continues to lead the church towards God's will. And just pray for him. Pray for his continued health, his continued longevity, and stability. So yeah, just pray for the Pope.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to episode number 52 of the Lost Sheep Podcast. As always, like, subscribe, leave a review, comment, follow us Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, anywhere you get your podcast. And we will be back for episode number 53 next week. Thank you all for watching, and God bless.